the mutual accusations of violating the agreement, is the United States-China trade deal effectively dead just a month after being signed?
It's a tough question.
To start with.
First, yeah. So it's not a month. It's actually 2 weeks, 2 long weeks, because that agreement happened in Geneva, in Switzerland,
Hmm.
and it was very theatrical. It was a surprise for the rest of the world, because until the 11th of May, the war of words between Beijing and Washington was very brutal.
Mhm.
So all of a sudden, on the 12th of May, when they reached a partial agreement, or that agreement they reached, actually they called it transitional or partial, because it meant that they had 90 days to iron out some of the details. So the idea is, middle of May we become friends again, and then by the sort of middle of August we kind of finalize everything, and we meet in Beijing or the White House in early September to sign, as Trump would say, a big, beautiful deal.
Mhm.
Now, that 2 weeks later, which takes us Friday, so Friday afternoon,
Mhm.
all of a sudden, President Trump vented his frustration with China, and he said that they were not, abiding by the deal they signed in Switzerland, that preliminary deal. And he said, okay, I'm going to be tough with them. I'm going to reinstate, to start with, 50% import duties on Chinese aluminum, but it's only the beginning. If they want war, we'll have war. And today, Chairman Xi Jinping in Beijing replied that if America wants a trade war, like they had, until the early months of May, China was willing, to walk that path. And all of a sudden, the US dollar went down, the S&P 500 and NASDAQ lost ground. So financial markets are anxious.
Mhm.
Is this the beginning of a new all-out war between China and America? I think not.
Hmm.
I think they're both theatrically marking their territories, and I think they will find some kind of modus vivendi in the coming days.
Which makes me want to ask you also, what do these early breakdowns tell us about the long-term prospects of meaningful trade cooperation between the United States and China?
Well, they have to cooperate. So basically,
They have to. It's
they have to.
inevitable. Mm.
Yeah. So it's in economics, it's called game theory, right? So
Mm.
game theory means even if you hate your enemy,
You
you
still
know,
have
they
to
put you
cooperate.
they put you in a room with your enemy, they lock the door, you
Mm.
either kill each other
Mm.
or you find an equilibrium.
Mm.
And so they have to find an equilibrium, but it's something very new, because for the past 40 years, there was only one superpower, it was America. And now there are two superpowers, essentially. And actually, you know what? It's the reason why Trump was elected. The American working class, the American middle class realized belatedly that it had been lied to by their own leaders, be they Republican like George W. Bush or Dick Cheney, or Democrats like Biden or Obama, that America was declining in many economic strategic fields, and it was no longer the sole superpower, and that they had to share the world with China.
Mm.
So it's very painful when mentally, culturally, strategically, you were the king, you were the leader for 40 years, and all of a sudden, you have to learn to share the world
Mm.
with another superpower, which is China. To make a long story short, I think they will reach a deal. I think they're both playing games.
Mm.
And the reason why they're both playing games is trust was broken.
Mm.
And because trust was broken, even when they met in Geneva 2 weeks ago, they drank a few glasses of champagne and said, oh, it's beautiful. But when they left Geneva, the Chinese went back to Beijing and the Americans went back to Washington. Trust is broken. It takes time to rebuild trust.
But
To
there is
make a long
also
story short,
strong rhetoric, sir, now, because how far is China likely to go with its what it called resolute and forceful measures, I'm quoting, and what tools are realistically available to it without escalating the situation into a full-blown trade war?
they both have something the other needs. And that's what gives me hope. I'm not hopeful because I believe in the sincerity of President Trump or the generosity of Chairman Xi Jinping. I think they are both realists. They're both aggressively realistic realists. And what do they have that the other needs badly and cannot get elsewhere? So America has advanced microchips that are needed for the AI industrial revolution. They're also needed for advanced, telecom, civilian weapon system. These advanced microchips only the Americans have, and to a lesser extent, Taiwan, South Korea, and Holland, right? Allies of America. The Chinese, on the other hand, they control the world's supply of rare earth minerals, and they also control these very sophisticated factories where rough rare earth minerals get refined. So even if you have rare earth minerals in Texas, Oklahoma, Alberta, you send it typically to China, to a factory, to get refined, right? And so American companies, American aircraft builders like Boeing, American military aircraft builders like McDonnell Douglas, all these companies, American car makers, they all need magnets, magnets made in China, rare earth minerals, refined rare earth minerals made in China. So so they both need it very badly, because if in Seattle, in that Boeing factory, they don't receive these Chinese-made magnets in the coming days, the whole production process will stall. Likewise, in China, if they stop receiving these advanced microchip manufactured in Texas or Oklahoma, many production plants will stall.
So they both need each other, if I understand correctly. They both,
yes,
the United States and China,
badly.
they need each other for their trade and economies to grow.
Yes.
Now, with both sides claiming breaches of the deal, is there any realistic path forward to salvage the 90-day tariff reduction agreement?
So I think the 90 days time window is reasonable because it leads us to the middle of August. Let's give them some oxygen, let's say the end of August. Then symbolically, they can meet in Beijing and Washington early September and sign that official big deal. Between now and the end of August, some of the hawks, they both have within the White House, there are hawks who wants to be very tough on China, and there are more moderate policymakers. The same is true in the standing committee of the Communist Party in Beijing. There are people who want to find a middle of the road solution, and there are also hawks who want to play tough with America. What I'm coming at, so internally and externally, they're playing games, but because they badly lead what the other has to offer, I think they will reach a rational middle of the road solution, but they're testing the limits. So why are they testing the limits? Probably after that meeting in Geneva, the Chinese were supposed to send more giant magnets, industrial magnets, refined rare earth mineral to America. They did not send. The Americans were supposed to send more microchips to China and give more student visas. They did not do so. I think they both kind of betrayed their words, testing the other party's limits, but I think they will both come to some kind of agreement. All the more that the Trump White House and the Chinese have something in common. They are very much influenced by financial markets. So both the Chinese Communist Party and President Trump and the Trump cabinet, when they wake up in the morning and they go to the office, the first thing they do, they look at the NASDAQ or they look at the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. And what happens on the Shanghai and Hong Kong Exchange, what happened on the NASDAQ has a big influence on what they do. And they know that if there are tensions between America, the valuation of Chinese companies and American companies listed in New York, Shanghai, and Hong Kong will collapse. They don't want that. So they're both very sensitive to financial markets. And I think this is something guarding them, preventing them from going to an all-out trade war like we had 1 or 2 months ago.